All right, everybody, buckle up, because this time we are diving deep, deep into the mysteries of Area 51.
Ooh, Area 51. I see we're tackling the big one this time, huh?
This one was requested by, well, a lot of you, actually, and we heard you. So get ready, because we've gone through tons of declassified documents, first-hand accounts, all that good stuff.
The mother lode.
Basically.
Uh-huh.
Now, you can't talk about Area 51 without thinking of, well,
Little green men.
UFOs.
Exactly. And well, we'll get to that. What really struck me going through all this is that Area 51, it's about way more than just that. It's really a story about, I don't know, a whole new era of technology and the anxieties that came with it, especially after World War II.
It's true. It's like the world had just seen what humanity was capable of, and everyone was kind of, well, freaked out.
Right. I mean, think back to the War of the Worlds broadcast in '38. People were convinced Martians were invading. Imagine that fear, but amplify it by, well, the atomic bomb.
Exactly. It was a recipe for, well, a different kind of fear. And the government, they knew they had to step up their game to, stay ahead.
Yeah.
And that's where our mysterious patch of desert comes in. Area 51 became the place, hidden away from prying eyes, where they could push those boundaries, test new technologies, all without causing a global panic.
Makes sense. Keep it hush-hush.
Right. And one thing that really blew my mind, and this is where things get really interesting, is Operation Paperclip.
Ah, yes. The arrival of the, shall we say, unique minds from overseas.
You mean former Nazi scientists?
Yeah.
Talk about a controversial chapter in history. It's kind of hard to believe they were brought in to help develop U.S. weapons.
Controversial, sure, but you can't deny their expertise. These guys were, well, let's just say they were ahead of their time in some interesting ways.
I guess so, but it still makes you think about the lengths they were willing to go to. But hey, speaking of lengths, we got to talk about the U-2 spy plane, the poster child of early Area 51.
Ah, yes, the U-2, soaring through the skies higher than anyone had ever gone before, snapping pictures of, well, everything.
And talk about pressure. Can you imagine being one of those pilots? Climbing into that thing with basically no instructions, just a top-secret mission and a prayer.
Talk about pressure. But it wasn't just about taking pretty pictures from up high, right? The U-2, it basically changed how the whole Cold War game was played.
Right. I mean, they were getting intel on the Soviets like never before. But all that secrecy, it came with a bit of a side effect.
You mean people freaking out about UFOs?
Bingo. It's kind of funny, right? The government's trying to be all secretive and stealthy, but in the process, they accidentally created a wave of UFO sightings.
The irony. They were trying to fly under the radar while literally flying above it.
Exactly. And as if things couldn't get any weirder, remember what happened in 1960 with Francis Gary Powers?
Oh, you mean when his U-2 got, shall we say, intercepted over Soviet airspace?
That's putting it mildly. It was like something out of a spy movie. Talk about a diplomatic nightmare. Suddenly, the world knew about these secret missions, and, well, things got very tense very quickly.
It was like the Cold War went from a simmer to a boil in an instant. And poor Powers caught in the middle of it all.
Right. His capture, the interrogations, it became this huge international incident. It really shows you how high the stakes were.
Absolutely. And how this new era of, spying from the skies, it had become the name of the game.
No kidding. But the U-2, it was just the beginning. Area 51, it was like a factory for innovation, churning out one groundbreaking tech after another.
A technological playground, if you will. And it wasn't just spy planes. We were talking about testing the limits of, well, pretty much everything back then.
Oh, yeah. And some of those tests, let's just say they were a tad on the explosive side.
A tad. They were detonating nuclear bombs in the atmosphere. Remember teak and orange?
Oh, man, those high-altitude tests in the late 50s. Yeah, talk about a controversial move.
Yeah.
I mean, exploding nukes right in the ozone layer. People were understandably freaking out even back then.
Rightfully so. And get this, when the New York Times got wind of it, almost published the whole story, the government, well, let's just say they weren't too thrilled.
They went into full panic mode, didn't they?
Damage control, my friend, damage control. Trying to convince everyone these massive explosions were just harmless little science experiments.
It's crazy what they thought they could get away with. But speaking of crazy, we got to talk about the Tsar Bomba. That thing was insane.
Yeah. 1961, the Soviets, 50 megatons. That's not just a bomb, it's practically a small earthquake.
It's mind-boggling. Hard to even wrap your head around that kind of destructive power.
It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it?
No kidding. But amidst all this, like Cold War one-upmanship, it's important to remember the human cost, Like what happened to Bikini Atoll?
Ah, yes, the Bikini Atoll. A stark reminder that progress, well, it often comes at a
And
price.
sometimes that price is paid by those who had absolutely nothing to do with it. Those poor islanders, their home irradiated, forced to relocate, the long-term health effects, just devastating.
It's a tragic story, no doubt. But it's also a reminder, about how interconnected all this stuff is. Even something like, well, drones, it can be traced back to those early atomic tests.
You're right. They needed a way to collect samples from the mushroom clouds, and drones, at least the early versions of them, seem like the least lethal option.
Emphasis on lease? Can you imagine being a pilot back then? All right, just fly straight through that radioactive cloud, you'll be fine.
The risks were insane. Remember the story of Donald Robinson? Crashed his plane in '54 after flying through a mushroom cloud, poor guy.
Those are different times, that's for sure. But Area 51, it wasn't all doom and gloom, right? There were incredible advancements being made, too. They were constantly pushing the envelope, testing new technologies, like, how vulnerable were American planes to Soviet defenses.
So they staged these elaborate mock attacks, simulated combat scenarios, basically a giant high-stakes game of chess, but with real planes.
And real consequences, let's not forget, it was a constant back and forth, each side trying to outmaneuver the other.
And speaking of outmaneuvering, we got to talk about let's call it a friendly rivalry between the CIA and the Air Force.
Those two, always trying to one-up each other. Talk about sibling rivalry.
But instead of fighting over the last slice of pizza, they were battling for billions of dollars and control over, who got to spy from the skies the best.
And it got, well, pretty cutthroat at times, like with the A-12 Oxcart, the CIA's super secret, super fast spy plane.
Oh yeah, that thing was a beast. But the Air Force, they couldn't let the CIA have all the fun, could they?
Nope. They pushed for their own version, which became the SR-71 Blackbird. And to add insult to injury, President Johnson actually revealed the A-12's existence to the public.
Talk about throwing the CIA under the bus. They were furious.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show how intense this rivalry was.
Oh, absolutely. And it wasn't just about bragging rights or who had the cooler toys. It had real-world consequences, like, remember the Bay of Pigs invasion?
Yeah, not exactly the CIA's finest hour.
Part of what went wrong. Poor coordination with the Air Force. Just goes to show even the best laid plans,
It's like they say, sometimes your biggest enemy is your own teammate. But hey, despite all the drama and setbacks, Area 51 was still producing some groundbreaking stuff. The D-21 drone, launched from the back of an A-12. Now, that was ambitious.
Ambitious and incredibly dangerous. That first launch, remember, ended with the mother aircraft being ripped in half.
Just goes to show sometimes pushing the boundaries has explosive results.
No kidding. But even with the risks, there was this sense of, pushing the limits of what was possible. And it wasn't just limited to what was happening here on Earth.
You're talking about the space race.
What else? When Sputnik launched in '57, man, that sent shockwaves through the U.S.
Sputnik. More like Sputnik, oh crap, we're behind. Am I right?
Exactly. And just like that, the space race was on. Everyone was caught up in the race to the moon. But behind the scenes, there was another competition going on.
Spy satellites. It's like something out of a James Bond movie.
I know, right? The ability to look down on enemy territory from space, it was a game changer.
Talk about Big Brother. But hey, both sides were doing it, so I guess it's all fair in love and Cold War espionage, right?
It really makes you wonder what else was going on that we don't know about.
Right. Like, what secrets are still hidden away in those vaults? Because, let's be real, the stuff we do know about, it's already pretty wild.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just ancient history, The legacy of Area 51, it's still with us today. Think about drones, for instance.
Oh, for sure. They're everywhere now, from those little ones delivering packages to, well, the ones we don't talk about so much.
Exactly. And then it all traces back to those early experiments at Area 51. They were the pioneers of drone technology, even if those early versions were, shall we say, a little less refined.
A little less. They were basically flying lawnmowers with cameras strapped to them. But hey, got to start somewhere, right? But you're right. The advancements since then, it's mind-blowing. But it does make you think, right, about the ethical implications.
It's a whole new world, isn't it? With its own set of rules and, well, moral dilemmas, the ability to wage war from a distance with no risk to the pilot.
It's a game changer, that's for sure. But on that note, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention, the not-so-great parts of Area 51's history. The government's track record with experimentation. Let's just say it's not exactly spotless.
Yeah, the radiation experiments during the Cold War, not exactly their proudest moment.
Testing on their own citizens, often without their knowledge or consent. It's a dark side of this whole quest for scientific advancement and national security.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that progress without ethics, it can be a dangerous thing. But hey, on a lighter note, you got to admit, Area 51, it's got this hold on people's imaginations, right?
Oh, totally. It's like this magnet for mystery and conspiracy theories. It's become bigger than itself.
The government's secrecy just adds fuel to the fire, doesn't it? The less they say, the more people want to know.
It's like the ultimate keep out sign, right? Just makes you want to peek over the fence even more.
Exactly. And the thing is, even though most of what went on at Area 51 is still top secret, the bits and pieces we do know, they paint a pretty incredible picture.
A place where the impossible was constantly being tested, challenged, and sometimes even achieved, like something straight out of a science fiction movie.
Right. And whether you believe in UFOs or government cover-ups or any of that, it's hard not to be fascinated by the mystery of it all.
Totally agree. Area 51, it makes you realize there's still so much we don't know about our own world, about the things that might be happening just beyond our reach.
And that's what makes it so intriguing, right? It's a reminder that there are still mysteries out there waiting to be uncovered.
Exactly. Well, folks, that about wraps up our deep dive into the world of Area 51. We've covered a lot of ground today, from its origins in the Cold War to its lasting impact on, well, pretty much everything.
It's a story of innovation, of risk-taking, and of the constant push and pull between secrecy and the pursuit of knowledge.
We hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, made you think about things a little differently, and maybe even inspired you to do a little digging of your own.
Because that's what it's all about, right? Never stop asking questions, never stop exploring.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this journey, everyone, and remember, stay curious.
Love what you're hearing? Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share it with others. Your support fuels the journey for more awesome content.